Hello everyone. Okay, so we're back with Electra Soul for another Spiritual Monday Talk video. I wanted to make today's video about spiritual psychosis for the reason that there are a lot of opinions on spiritual psychosis, and I just feel like I'm just gonna give my 2 cents on that because I want y'all to hear my opinion. Honestly, like that's really what the biggest thing is, because I do have like a big opinion on that. And what I mean by spiritual psychosis is basically like the internet's interpretation of that, in the way that I have seen so many posts in which someone will say something very spiritual. Okay, let's say, like, usually I see this on Twitter. I don't really see it on TikTok. I see it more on Twitter. But someone will say something where they will point out something that, you know, it makes sense. Like what they're saying does make sense, especially for myself. Like I'm a very spiritual person, as y'all know. If y'all don't know who I am, which I'm sure y'all do, I'm a psychic medium, a spiritual life coach, and just that spiritual girl putting everybody on. Okay, so I know exactly what it's like to be really, really, really in touch with the spiritual side of things. And I also entirely really do understand why people don't understand that, because it is a very, not like a complex topic, but it is something that you have to be really in touch with something within you to understand these things with an open mind, because that's really what the whole world is about. It's about you being open-minded. It's about you understanding that this world is not, it just isn't what it looks like, but not in the way that we walk amongst monsters, not like that. I mean in the way that anything can happen. Like things happen left and right all the time that are unexplainable, that don't make sense, that whatever. Oh, hello. I mean, yeah, they happen like that because this is the world. You know, the world is very big. It's very limitless. We're not the only gender or species, I meant. We're not the only freaking species in the world as far as, you know, us being human. Well, maybe not in the world, but in the universe, we're definitely not the only source of species out there. You know, like humans are not the biggest thing that's out there. I know for a fact because it just freaking listen to that. Like, how does that sound to you? It sounds right because that's what it is. This entire world is too big for us to be assuming that there's just like one or two ways about certain things. But like I was stating earlier, is that on Twitter, for example, okay, so let's say that someone gives their 2 cents on something that they think is like a weird coincidence. Okay, a great example would be, let's say that someone's saying, oh, this has symbolism to this thing, right? Like two different things have symbolism to each other. And then usually, you know, I do get where the analysis of that person might be a little bit far-fetched. Like I do understand that because I've seen that myself, and I'm very much in touch with that, like understanding where things seem a little far-fetched. You know, okay, maybe you're reaching a little bit, but it's not that they have bad intentions. It's probably just them trying to connect dots, right? And then I'll see like a response to it, in which that tweet is usually the one that also blows up, and it's like spiritual psychosis at its worst or whatever, you know, things like that. And when I see things like that, I honestly get a little bit sad. It actually makes me like sad inside, because I feel like, for one, people don't understand what people say, so they kind of attack it in that sense. And I will say, as someone who used to make a lot of spiritual TikToks on TikTok, I used to talk a lot about connections between certain things. It depended on the topic, but I used to cover a lot of like demonology based things because I had so many experiences in that department. Okay, so I've had so many dreams about certain celebrities, about certain demonic things, and you know, I had those dreams. Like, I'm not gonna sit here and say I didn't, or I'm not gonna like exaggerate them, because they were never an exaggeration, my love. Believe me on that. I had plenty of dreams showing me, like, exposing a lot of different things that were connected to each other. And you know, obviously I didn't share every single dream with the internet, because I understand where it can be totally misinterpreted, which honestly at the time, this was back when I was a lot less secure in myself. So I would like state my opinion on the internet, or not even an opinion, it would be like something that happened or something where things were connected, and then people would go like ballistic. I don't know if it's because it's the kind of person that I am. Like, I don't know if it's because my energy was like really strong, or people just really thought I was insane or something, but people would get really triggered and they would just like get really mad at me, and they would think that I was absolutely out of my mind, because how could this make sense at all? You know what I'm saying? And in that case, I remember that it used to really bring me down, because I used to feel bad. You know, I used to think like, oh, I feel like I'm confusing a lot of people, or people just don't understand what I'm talking about, whatever. But then as time went on, I learned to understand that that was all happening where people were seeing certain videos of mine that they didn't understand to help open their mind. Like, that's how I saw it, you know? Because with the internet, for example, with spiritual psychosis, is that a lot of people feel very comfortable just putting other people down when they don't understand something, because they think that they can. You know, a lot of people hide behind a profile picture, an unknown account. They hide behind something something that they know that no one's gonna give them shit for in that sense. And even other people, like, they don't really care. They'll just say what they say because they actually believe what they're saying. But the whole point is that they are doing that with the intention of bringing you down because they don't understand what you're talking about. And it's not to say that they are a bad person, because a lot of times it's not that they're bad, it's just that they're kind of ignorant. Like, they choose to not understand, or maybe they just like feel like they can't understand. They don't have the capability to understand, even though they absolutely do. Like, everyone has the ability to understand anything in this life as long as you have your mind open to it. But I want y'all to understand that when it comes to like spiritual psychosis, there's a major difference in which you can actually tell when someone's being like, all right, a little bit drastic in their observations, kind of. You know, if someone is actually being a little bit dramatic about it, you can usually tell because of inconsistency, where the things that they say don't match up with each other. Like, they don't make sense. Or you can just feel that something's actually off. But I don't mean like something's off about this because I don't understand it. That's not the same thing. You know, like, don't assume that something's off with someone because you don't understand what they're saying. Try to be open-minded and try to understand what they're talking about before you assume that something's wrong with this person or that they need to touch grass or whatever. Because at the end of the day, it really is all going to show itself up to you. There's a lot of people on the internet who just want clicks and views. And those people on the internet will always make it known to you that they are looking for those kinds of things because it will just be very obvious. Like, usually it's very obvious. You can tell by the energy, things like that. But in other cases, there are people out here who are psychic mediums, okay? So another example that I'm gonna use very anonymously is that I was on TikTok the other day on my FYP, and somebody posted, sorry, my cat is like, someone posted that they picked up something about something that had occurred, and they were giving their insight on it from like a psychic medium perspective, right? So they were saying that they spoke to some sort of thing that was telling them all this information, and they were sharing it with the audience, which would be like people on TikTok, right? And most people actually were very much understanding of it, which I loved, because it made me feel like, okay, you know, people are obviously opening up their minds to this kind of stuff in the way that they should, because, you know, this world is limitless, so why not understand all sides of everything, especially when you can feel that someone is actually sharing their experience, you know? Because again, not everyone's gonna understand, but a lot of these things are very real. You know, every single time that I shared an experience with some sort of angel or spirit or whatever, I was telling the truth. Like, I never went on the internet and just started bullshitting, like talking smack about whatever when I didn't understand it for views. Like, I did everything that I could in the way that I understood it at that time, and I just intended that people would understand, and I wanted to help people understand. So even then, you know, I learned to be very grateful for even the people who didn't understand and would try to make fun of me so that they can gain traction, because that's usually what it is too. Like, they'll make fun of you because other people are doing it, and then, you know, they get attention from that too. So it's like, you know, it's like a lot of fuel, you know? So in that sense, I learned to understand that I learned a lot through me sharing my experiences because people were still learning. But yes, back to this person. So some people were agreeing, most people were, and then some people were like absolutely convinced that this person was out of their mind. And it is understandable as to why they might think that that person was out of their mind, in the sense that what they were saying was for something that only very deeply connected spiritual people would understand, because not everyone is a psychic medium. Like, not everyone has spoken to spirits before, not everyone has communicated with whatever, so they might not understand. But at the end of the day, it's all about understanding that you don't have to understand everything in order for it to be true, you know? So yeah, like, even with those other people, they were kind of saying that she was absolutely out of her mind, and they were like very sure about that by the way that they wrote their comments. At least that's what it appeared like, that they were like, no, this person is absolutely crazy, blah blah blah. Okay, so when I read those comments, I actually got kind of upset. Like, that's what inspired me to make this video today. It was because I didn't feel like upset in the way that it brought me down, but I was like, y'all don't even understand this person. Like, it's very clear that you don't. I was actually going to respond to the comment and give them like my insight as to how they should be perceiving these things, but I was like, nah, like, I channeled that I shouldn't say anything, so I didn't say anything. And the reason for that was probably because they were very adamant about not understanding, so I just chose to like step back and just let it happen. And I trusted that eventually, you know, these people either would understand, or the original poster would get the credit that they deserve, in the sense that they are validated, which they were, because a lot of people were saying a lot of great things. I mean, it's not about what people say though, it's just more about the fact that she's understood. And alongside that, they also did respond to someone else and said something along the lines of, oh, it just sounds like you don't understand what I'm saying, basically. And I understood that too, because that's what it always usually appears like. But yes, okay, so the whole thing with spiritual psychosis is that I feel like that term being thrown around in that sense where it's like, oh, because spiritual connection to this and that doesn't make sense to me, doesn't mean that they have spiritual psychosis or that they're going through that. Again, you can usually tell when someone is actually going through that by the energy, by the way that they're explaining things. If they go on rampages a lot about different things that don't seem to add up with each other, kind of thing. Like if people are literally just portraying signs of them not being mentally sane, that's a totally different story. And that right there is not even spiritual psychosis in that sense. At least I don't think so. I feel like spiritual psychosis is more of when you think that there are energies and entities and spirits there talking to you when they're literally not. You know what I'm saying? Like when you are dead ass imagining these things in your head and you're like, oh my god, the spirit just said this, but like there was no spirit that said anything. Like it could have just been your imagination. But there are other times where there are people who do actually experience these things and they are actually listening to those things and they do hear them, but they don't understand what's happening. That's exactly the exact opposite of spiritual psychosis. That is just a person going through something spiritual in which they don't understand what's happening. But even then, those kinds of people will eventually make sense of what they're going through and they will be able to properly explain that to other people. So that's something within itself, you know, like it's an experience that everyone goes through in their own way, at least the spiritual people do, and the people who do want to learn more about these things. But yeah, guys, you know, I just want y'all to remember to remain really open-minded and try to be as limitless. I mean, don't try, just be as limitless as you can possibly be, when, especially when you are listening to stories about spiritual things online, for example. And the reason I'm really like emphasizing online is because I've only ever seen this online. Like I don't see this in person unless, I mean, I have seen like people, you know, talking about these kinds of things out loud, but usually you again, you can tell the difference, you know, like there will be people who will come up to me and will tell me about some sort of really spiritual experience they had with, for example, a dream, and they saw something, and then we'll talk about it, and that's one thing within itself. And then I'll have someone else who's like low-key going off on a rampage that does not make sense at all, and then they're only adding to it. Like it just doesn't make sense at all, you know? So it's a huge difference between something not making sense and someone not understanding something, and you have to find out the difference for yourself for you to actually decipher whether someone's crazy or not, you know, obviously, because I don't think anyone's genuinely crazy. I just feel like some people are going through something in their head sometimes, and that can be interpreted by, oh, this person's crazy, but in reality, we all have that in the bag. Like we are all very spiritual beings and we can tell the difference. And I feel like if someone is sharing their experience on the internet, maybe this video is, well, it is intended, but maybe it will help y'all understand or try to understand things from a different perspective when you do see things online. You know, obviously don't go down a rabbit hole of trying to see everyone's spiritual experiences, because that to yourself can make you feel like you're always having to be on guard, like on watch with everything around you in terms of spirituality. Because maybe if you watch like a billion ghost stories, you're gonna start thinking that there are ghosts around you and there might not even be, or even in that sense you could attract them and you don't want that, you know? Or, you know, in any other way, it's like if you just see something that maybe in the past that you would have made fun of and you would have like totally clowned on them or whatever, try to listen to them and try to really feel your intuition out to see what you feel about this person, if they're telling the truth, if they're exaggerating, if whatever, you know? Because on the internet, a lot of people do want to help other people, especially when it comes down to spiritual things. I do feel like a lot of it can be about getting a lot of like views and things like that, because it is understandable in the sense that for some people they feel like maybe that's the only way, you know, like maybe they have to make money and they want to get like a lot of views on a certain platform because they want to make that income. But in other cases, there are people who do just want to help and they do just want to say exactly what's happening in their life in terms of like some spiritual connection. Maybe it could be something that you really love and you don't want to hear about how this is spiritually connected to this other thing. Like it could be, you know, a lot of them are theories, by the way. I just want y'all to know that as well, is that with spiritual things, for example, even for my old videos where I would talk about a lot of spiritual things, is that it is all very subjective, you know? Like that's why I never put disclaimers, but I feel like that was a given. But I feel like people don't really go to that conclusion initially. You have to kind of say things if you want people to understand them a certain way sometimes, and I had to learn to understand that, because a lot of the things I would talk about were very subjective. You know, something that might have went for me could have not gone for somebody else, because that's just how different we are with our minds, you know? But it's not to say that I was wrong or that they were wrong or whatever. It's just to say that there are two totally different opinions, and that, you know, we all have different experiences, and that was it. And every single time I shared my experiences, I was extremely thankful to know that there were were so many people who would go through the same exact thing that I was going through. Y'all don't know how many DMs I would get. Like every freaking day, people would be DMing me about spirits that they would see, that they were being haunted, that that was happening, like all kinds of different things, even dreams that they would have about certain celebrities too, like all of that. Everything went hand in hand, and I felt very thankful to know that there were so many people that understood what I was talking about. Although to me at the time, it felt like the people who didn't understand me were very loud, and they didn't make me feel crazy because I knew I wasn't, but it was like, what hurt me was that they were trying to make me seem crazy. But even then, you know, it doesn't hurt me at all anymore, because now I know the difference. Like I have power over myself, and in the past I may have felt like I didn't have power, and that's what made me feel that way, because I would feel like, oh, these people must know better than I do because I feel so small right now. But in reality, I just had to stand up, and I had to learn to understand that just because these people don't understand what I'm talking about does not make my experience any less important, I guess. Relevant, that's more what it is. It didn't make anything less relevant. It just only showed me that some people were honestly really afraid of the words that I was speaking, and that was completely fine. But you know, obviously, like, I learned my lesson, and I intend that they did too, because we all should, you know. But yes, with that being said, my love, I truly intend that this spiritual video today does help y'all out to the most of its ability in whichever way, shape, or form that it could have, because I do know that this was like a very open-ended video in the sense that I was just talking about spiritual psychosis as a whole. I feel like it's very important to be very open-minded about the way that you see things on the internet, and to understand that, you know, it's like you have to just really use your discernment really well. I've seen a lot of, again, videos that seemed very true to me, and then others that seemed not so true, but at the end of the day, I would just channel to ask. Like, I would just ask, is this video factual, or are these people telling the truth? Is this not truthful? Things like that, and I would always get an answer, and that would also help me because it would confirm what I felt on the inside, you know? So just like that, guys, remember, even for yourselves, if you're someone who wants to talk about your spiritual experiences, please do it. Don't be afraid of what anyone has to say about you or what the internet has to say, because, you know, the truth is you probably, or you might blow up. I'm not gonna like tell y'all that you will, and I don't want you to like take this and be like, oh, I'm gonna blow up, let me go and do this, because that's not authentic, and you will get shut down for that, in the sense that like people will pick up on your inauthenticity and they're not going to be drawn to that. So the more authentic you are, if you do actually want to go online and talk about your experiences, and you want to say your story times, or you want to talk about how you feel like these two things are correlated, or they go hand in hand, as long as you're not being disrespectful to anyone or to anything, then go right in on sharing your experiences, and just trust that the right people will find you. And that was something that I feel like has taught me a lot about what it is to be on the internet, because I totally understand why people can be very cruel to other people on the internet. It's just because they feel like they can, and they feel like it's easy to misinterpret people, you know, like a lot of times. I'm not gonna say all the time, because I know for myself, I choose not to do that. I take everything very subjectively. So when I am on the internet and I do go on Twitter or on TikTok or whatever, YouTube, I take everything with a grain of salt, in the way that if someone says something, I'm not gonna just take it and run, and I'm also not gonna take their comments and just run, where people say certain things to that person in response, whether it's in support or not in support, whatever. I take everything with a very open mind, and I try to understand everyone's perspective, unless they're being blatantly disrespectful, you know, then that's different. But yeah, I just want y'all to understand that, again, you know, you can say what you want and do what you want. The only thing that I ask of y'all is that y'all have like a really strong mind and heart, and to not be afraid of what people are gonna say about you, because honestly, if you're gonna be honest about your opinions, then just let them come to you. Because I know that I had a lot of great support too, and I was very thankful for that. Like, I had a lot of support, but honestly, I was too insecure at the time for me to really take that support and run with it. Like, I took more of the negativity with me because it would overwhelm me so much. But you know, whatever, I learned a lot through that, and I'm very thankful I went through that, because that was something that was like surreal in a way, not in the way that it was like, wow, oh my god, no, it wasn't like that. It was more of just like, I had to keep up with everything happening around me. Like, as long as I wanted to make the videos that I wanted to make at that time, I had to learn that it was coming with that, like all of these things too. And again, keep in mind, this is before I really knew how to channel in the law of assumption in the way that I would only manifest positivity and things like that. Like, I didn't really know much about that at that time, because I had a really low self-esteem and I was really afraid. But I learned to understand as time went on that I can have a much better experience on the internet, and then I did, and that didn't mean that I was crazy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I knew that all of my spiritual experiences were very authentic to me, and they were very much real. Like, they were things that I actually had gone through, and just because people didn't understand didn't mean that I was wrong. You know, like, people don't know me better than myself, and that's something that's really important for y'all to understand too, is that people don't know you better than you know yourself. So don't let them try to bring you down in any way, shape, or form, because they don't know more than you do in that sense, you know, in that regard to your experience. Okay, I'm not saying that you're sharing like dictionary knowledge and people are correcting you. That's different. I'm saying your experience. No one can tell you about your experience, you know, like, this is your life. Okay, so with that being said, I don't regret anything. I'm very thankful. The only times that I would feel like regret was whenever I would feel like I was hurting people, but honestly, I know I wasn't actually hurting anyone. I feel like people were trying to make me feel like I was being absolutely bizarre, in the sense that I was hurting their feelings, because it just felt like an attack to them. I don't know, like, they would just take things out of proportion and just make it into a huge deal, and other people would try to agree with them, and it was just like a big cloud of that. And at the end of the day, it's not like they were right, you know, like, I still know I stood on business, and if I was ever wrong about anything, I was sure to apologize. But even then, it's like really hard for me to think about that, because I know who I was, especially at that time. Those people who said those things to me or like treated me that way, I intend that they would get their karma, in the sense that they would learn their lesson and understand that they can't be that ignorant or that mean, especially to someone that they don't know, and especially to someone who has good intentions, because I know that my intentions were always felt. Like, everyone always knew I was a good person. People didn't understand like where I was coming from, but that wasn't an attack on my character, although they wanted it to be like that. It didn't work, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's not intended to work. It's because it's just an exposure of how they feel about themselves and of their reality, and you just have to understand for yourself that you are correct about what you're saying. You know, as long as you have faith and trust in yourself, and even if you feel like you don't want to share a certain experience, don't. But if you want to, do it. You know, do whatever you want, but just be sure that you're prepared for what might come with it, is the fact that some might not understand, but there will be plenty who will, because there always is somebody who does. And I'm very thankful for that. Like, I'm really thankful about the way that people have learned to understand me, especially in that way. I had a lot of support as well. Like, I'm very thankful for that. And this was not a video to focus on all that stuff. It was just me being real. Like, I'm just being completely honest with you guys from my experience, how it was like, especially as someone who was labeled as someone who was like spiritually psychotic, basically, like someone who was just like not like basically like spewing bullshit. And it was very hurtful at the time. But you know, I was never that kind of person who would say that about anyone. So you can just assume that they were all really unhappy people, and that's just it. You know, they were just ignorant, and that's not my problem. You know, I'm a very happy person, so even if I don't understand something, I'm never like, this bitch is crazy. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe, you know, insert here, like, okay, let's just see. Things like that. It's not like the benefit of the doubt, but it's more of just giving a chance. Like, let's go. I guess it is a benefit of the doubt, but it's not like I had a doubt. It's just more of, let's see, like, let's just see what happens, you know? Okay then. But with that being said, guys, I truly intend that y'all enjoyed today's talk video about this, because this was honestly a topic that I've been meaning to cover, but it was more in defense of people who are very spiritual and do share their experiences in which people don't understand them. But again, guys, like, if it really is authentic, usually it's going to gain a lot of good traction, because people will naturally feel the energy and learn to understand you, unless you're sitting there and unintentionally manifesting a lot of negativity, which is something that I did anticipate a lot. I would assume that people were going to be really mean to me, because they were, and it would happen a lot, because I low-key would like expect that, but I didn't want that. I just felt like it was like no other way, you know? But it was proven differently to me, in which things ended up working out for me, and everything worked out in my highest favor anyway, so I had nothing to worry about. And I'm very thankful that I said all that I did. My camera's about to die. God bless you guys. Thank you guys so much, and thank you guys for everything on TikTok too. You guys are the freaking best. I love y'all so much. God bless you. Bye.